What is cybersecurity? Well, most people would say that we need to protect electronic means, whether it's through hardware, software, or the information itself, from attacks. But it's a little broader than that, and cybersecurity needs to be addressed from both an internal perspective as well as an external perspective. So a common definition that is utilized is cybersecurity being the body of technologies, processes, and practices designed to protect networks, computers, programs, and data from attack, damage, or unauthorized access. So this is crucial because it's not just about the data itself, but it's all of the facets that one would consider when mitigating risk. So policies and procedures, some of the technical requirements, and some physical securities are areas that we're going to delve into in a little bit later. What are some major breaches that have occurred? All of the breaches that I've listed here on the slide are headline makers. Adobe being one, 38 million customer accounts were compromised. Target, 40 million customer accounts were targeted and compromised from a breach. Snapchat had 4.6 million users. U.S. banks, a lot of websites offline were hit. Then we have HIPAA violations, which include Community Health Systems, Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and Tenant, as well as security exchanges and infrastructure attacks. So I want to focus specifically on CHS as well as the Tenant issues up front. That's because CHS, in addition to being a hospital system, it's also a publicly traded company. So not only does the company need to make sure that it met what's required under HIPAA, it also had to make sure that it was in compliance with Sarbanes-Oxley and the relevant securities law regulations as well. In terms of disclosure, typically disclosure relates to rules and regulations promulgated directly from either the 1933 Securities Act and or the 1934 Exchange Act. And what's interesting is when CHS identified the breach and identified the source, they had to file an 8K filing, which basically, for non-securities lawyers or people not familiar with the market, is a type of form that's submitted or a statement that's submitted directly to the SEC when a material event occurs that impacts the company. And that's what happened here. We're going to get into a little bit further later on in the presentation what the SEC requires so that additional vulnerabilities are not exploited for any company in terms of their cybersecurity, but to make sure that they're meeting the requirements that investors in the market has for disclosing that type of information. Another issue is Tenant Health Systems, which is based in Dallas, Texas. And I specifically put the fine up there for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, the Tenant case was filed in April 1996 in a court in Louisiana. This is important because it was actually pre-HIPAA. HIPAA was effective August 1996. And so how did we get a case that was filed beforehand that took nearly 20 years to come to conclusion through the courts addressing the various exploitation of sensitive data? Well, a couple of reasons. A, any cybersecurity violation or breach of sensitive data, which can be in the form of protected health information, PHI, electronic protected health information, EPHI, or personally identifiable information, PII, can be brought in terms of a common law cause of action through negligence typically. So that's something that every entity should be aware of, that even if there may not be a particular sanction that can be imposed by a federal government agency or by a state government agency, there's always the opportunity to be sued in court. And in this instance, what happened was mental health records were left outside and in a box, and they were found, and obviously a breach occurred from that. Some of the members sued the entity before tenant purchased that mental health facility, and tenant absorbed that liability, so that's why they're liable for this. Again, it took approximately 20 years, 18 to 20 years for this case to come to fruition after a lot of back and forth and motions and everything else. And the ultimate result was $32.6 million fine, which, depending on what the entity's market cap is, that can really have a significant impact, or if they're privately held company, most companies don't operate in that realm.